everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you for joining me. Back at it again, my astrology friends. We made it through the eclipses. Hopefully you guys are doing well and thriving, recovering from some of that turbulence. Things are going to get a little bit easier from here on out. So we can be thankful for that this week. Lots of stuff going on. Made headlines for the week. This is going to be for November 13th through the 20th of 2022. We've got a handful of things going on. Trines that are happening between Jupiter and Neptune, some water trines, which are going to be very emotional, sensitive, and intuitive. Sextiles to Pluto taking place between transits in Scorpio and Pluto in Capricorn. And we have Mercury and Venus both changing signs going into the mutable fire sign of Sagittarius. So this is just to give you guys some insight as you plan your week ahead. Great time to grab your calendar, your weekly calendar, your iPhone calendar, whatever, and take some notes. We're going to go day by day from today, Sunday the 13th, all the way through the 20th next week. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer. I do lots of videos on astrology in regards to the monthly transits. I have horoscopes, lunation videos on the new and the full moons and the eclipses and everything in between. So if you're really into that stuff, please hit the subscription button below so you're alerted as to when we have new videos coming out on the channel. Super close to 10K. We're going to hit it probably sometime within this next week. So big thank you to everybody who's been helping me reach that goal. Let's go ahead and dive deep and we'll take a look at what's going on. So kicks off with today, the 13th. Today we've got Venus in Scorpio coming into a sextile with Pluto in Capricorn. So it's going to be happening. Let me roll my clock back a little bit here so you guys can see. Right around that 26-degree mark. So you might be even feeling it starting to build actually Saturday night on the 12th. But Venus in Scorpio coming into the sextile with Pluto in Capricorn. Sextiles are harmonious energy flows. You just have to do a little bit of action in one area to kind of prompt the other. We'll see sextiles as these planets, Mercury, the Sun, and Venus are moving through Scorpio, and also next year when they're moving through the sign of Pisces. But for right now, Scorpio being a sign that is deeply associated with both Mars and Pluto, making these really nice aspects, we call them lazy aspects, a sextile, just kind of whispering sweet nothings to Pluto. The feelings that I get about, this sextile is because we're taking the energy of the Sun, Mercury, the deep, insightful kind of psychic mind in Scorpio, and then Venus being about Pluto. All of these sextiles scream to me like sexy, deep, powerful, and a tad bit secretive. Like there can be some energy that's just kind of like a little bit more power hungry, grounded, focused with all of these sextiles that we're seeing to Pluto. Strategizing, planning, that's something else, especially if you're like kind of planning for the year end right now, towards the end of 2022 or even the beginning of 2023 for getting things in order, right? Getting things structured or getting down to business. Now, this is all before these planets come into conjunction with Pluto. So there is still going to be like this rebirth phase that's going to happen that we'll see during Capricorn season, actually closer to even the first of the month. We'll see these planets coming into conjunction, the 1st of January, coming into conjunction with Pluto, and those planets will be reborn. There will also be a retrograde that's going to be in Capricorn. So this to me feels like things are both like winding down for the end of the year, but still kind of preparing for like, okay, well, what's the schedule going to be in December, and what are we planning for the new year, and how much time are we taking off? So it's not time to kind of mentally check out. Actually, there's a great deal of stuff that can actually be really planned very well, and lots of strategy that can go into these sextiles. Because, like I said, Scorpio is associated with Pluto, it makes me feel like it's about talking about transformation, transforming the way that we are with our resources, highlighting things that maybe were not visible before. We'll be in this energy for a couple of days, but the Venus-Pluto sextile, I think, is quite sexy in my opinion. This same day, though, there is some intensity because we'll see that the moon in Cancer is going to start coming into an opposition with Pluto. Now, this is a bit of a sweet and a salty aspect. Actually, for the most part, today I'm liking the lunar transits. Like, I like the fact that the moon is coming further into Cancer, and the moon and the sun will trine. So this is like a day where it's like everything kind of goes according to plan. And then we also have the moon come into a trine with Mercury. So it allows us to better deeply communicate our feelings and also like our intuitions and like where we're a little bit more sensitive or afraid even, because the moon in Cancer does talk about like protecting the home and anything in regards to having security within our home base. So as the moon trines the sun, we see things kind of come together naturally. The moon trines Mercury, we're able to communicate our feelings and what maybe our hidden passions or our desires are. And then it will trine out to Venus. Later in the evening and going into the early hours of the 14th, we will see that the moon comes into an opposition with Pluto. So there's this sense of, I'm afraid of vulnerability, but I have to talk about it. I'm afraid of bringing this, forward, but, I'm going to have a lot more security by just kind of coming out with it. On the other side of the chart, we'll also see that the moon will trine both Neptune and Jupiter. So I'm really loving the water trines on Sunday and Monday. But I think that the opposition with, the moon and Pluto can be very emotionally challenged, right? So there's some emotional challenges, and I'll show you when this is going to really start kicking into overdrive later in the evening, right around like the 8 or 9 p.m. Pacific time period. Some of you guys on the East Coast are already going to be asleep, so thankfully you're going to kind of miss this. But still, with that moon trine Neptune and Jupiter can really open things up for quite a bit of significant dreams that are going on, emotional clearing, decompressing from what has been a rather emotional week that we have had. Now, we wake up on the 14th and we see that then Mercury in Scorpio is coming into a sextile with Pluto. So you're going to notice this theme, right? Venus sextile Pluto. Like, where can we go deeper in regards to strategizing relationships, money, power? And then Mercury, the mind, is going to then sextile Pluto, and then we talk about it. So I like really like whatever comes up, today on the 13th, just up for you emotionally, or if you need to get something off your chest emotionally, it can be a really wonderful day for that. So then Mercury comes into the sextile with Pluto, really opening up in regards to being able to go deeper into facts and information and data and anything that's being kind of exposed. I mean, we've heard a lot throughout this last week of like some of the rumbles that have been going on in the crypto world with some of the crypto exchanges. And I think that a lot of these transits that are going through Scorpio about some of what's being exposed about, things that are not being regulated, right, are literally the sextiles to Pluto, where like all the facts and the information is coming out. And then Pluto in Capricorn is going to be like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do about it. We might hear more about that in the new year. But this is still an energy where stuff is being kind of cleared out, and maybe we're mentally detoxing. Maybe we're just finally coming out with things that we have to say. Maybe we're asking questions that we should have asked for a long time, and kind of poking and prodding in a comfortable way with Pluto, trying to kind of get some insight in terms of where we can kind of feel like we have more solid ground and we can feel more so in control, because that's what that's about. But Mercury and Pluto is definitely, when it's in a sextile, it's in a harmonious aspect, and it's allowing us to kind of really get to the bottom of conversations. I think that's going to give us the most insight or things that could be revealed. Now, this same day on the 14th, we're also going to see that the sun is in Scorpio still, and it's forming a trine with Neptune. So beautiful aspect, great day for feeling just more enlightened, for feeling more in tune with the universe, meditation, feeling kind of like you're finding the path, right? It's like, okay, this is the direction I'm supposed to be going, but you need to feel your way into it, because Scorpio has the tendency to kind of make you go through the dark. And then Neptune is about being able to kind of trust in a higher power. So there can be like this shift that's going on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's like, okay, this is really scary, but I'm going to take a leap of faith. And like, my intuition is telling me to do this, or my tarot cards, confirmed something for me, or I had a dream and it confirmed something for me. And it's about being able to find the glory plan when you see trines between, Neptune and the sun, and finding like your purpose. So there might be some spiritual breakthroughs that are taking place as a result of this, or some awareness With all these planets in Scorpio, the veil is still very thin. So I just want you guys to know it. We might be a couple weeks past Halloween, but there's definitely still a lot of being really kind of tapped in and tuned in. And I'm loving the fact that we have these sextiles to Pluto, allowing us to go deeper and really kind of problem solve with Mercury being involved. And then it's all going to start trining out to both Neptune and Jupiter. And we start to realize that some of the more turbulent things that we've been going through, or some of the more challenging things that's been coming up for us to communicate or talk about, there are emotional releases that are coming. There are going to be periods where we're feeling like we can finally kind of decompress and we can let go now that we've finally kind of gotten something and out in the open and we've cleared the air. This same day, we see that the moon is in Leo. So nothing too crazy going on with the moon at first. You will be seeing that as the moon goes deeper into Leo, it's going to kind of get banged up because it's going to square Uranus. It's going to square all the Scorpio, and then it's going to oppose Saturn. So, earlier on the 14th, decent day. I definitely think that it makes me a little curious because when the moon is in Leo, we're actually more so looking at the sun. Like we can look at the lunar events, but there's so many lunar aspects that happen from day to day. But that's really shining a light on the sun, and the sun is coming into this trine with Neptune, finally breaking away from its chokehold with Saturn. So it's definitely been a very colorful last week. All right, so then we take this to the 15th, and this is Tuesday. One of the lighter days, I will say that. Tuesday, interesting, we see Venus in Scorpio come into a trine with Jupiter in Pisces. So we generally see Venus trine Jupiter twice a year because we'll see the conjunction and then two trines. Trines are obviously free-flowing energy. They're already the energy of Jupiter. It makes things bigger. So when we see Venus in a water sign, okay, so Venus is in its fall in Scorpio. Venus being in a water sign is like really passionate, really, really connected, really devoted, like willing to do anything. It's like a really strong, intense, fixed energy when you're looking at Venus. And anytime planets are sitting at that like 28, 29 degrees, it does talk about it being like the excess of that particular sign in terms of the energy. So to watch Venus go through the trines to Neptune, and now it's going to trine Jupiter, overall, it's a very positive aspect. Okay, so if you're a chart that's ruled by Venus or by Jupiter, so if you're a Taurus or a Libra or a Sag rising, Pisces rising, you guys might feel this energy a little bit more. Really, really wonderful. If you've got planets that are in like the last, couple degrees of both Pisces and Scorpio, you're going to benefit the most from this. But when you take the planet that is associated with love and harmony and devotion and romance and relationships, and you have it trine Jupiter, it makes everything bigger. It's like almost like looking through everything, through like a disco ball. So I have thought that these trines, both to Neptune and Jupiter, because they're in water signs, it is more sensitive, it's more emotional, it's more reflecting, it's more reminiscing. Sometimes it can also be about what we've lost, what we're letting go of. That seems to be a really big theme with some of these cycles in general. So it may not have that same zip that you see when Venus is in Pisces and it trines, something in Scorpio, or Venus is, in Cancer and it's going to trine something in Pisces. When it's in water signs, it's going to be very sensitive and emotional, but I think that, like I said, you're not going to see as much action. You're going to see more sensitivity, softness, people being a little bit more vulnerable and opening up more. And so I think that the opening is really so stemming more from the fact that a lot of us are kind of like picking up the pieces and assessing the damage as a result of what has kind of happened over the last few weeks. You may happen to be somebody who's a water sign and you're like, I really like this energy. It makes me feel great. Obviously, these are more general. But I think for a lot of people, these late degree planets in Scorpio trining out Neptune and Jupiter is almost like this relief of like, oh, well, finally I came out with it. So like now I can feel a little bit more comfortable. So there might be things that you're feeling like you need to get off your chest. And you might find that there's like lessons in love or lessons in relationships are many. Definitely can be a more positive or harmonious day when it comes to just negotiations and relationships in general. The challenge that we're going to see on the 15th is that as the day goes later, we're going to see that Venus is going to shift and it's going to change signs. So it's going to come out of that trine. We're also going to be seeing that Venus is losing its sextile to Pluto. And we've got this moon in Leo throughout the day that is going to oppose Saturn and then start building into squares, both with fixed placements in Scorpio, both of the nodes, and also Uranus. So you guys don't want to sleep on when the moon is going through Leo. I've said this quite a bit throughout this year just because it'll always square the nodes and it'll square Uranus and oppose Saturn. When we get into like next year and Saturn changes signs, we're not going to have this kind of like bang up that we have every time planets go through Leo, but it's still worth mentioning because this is a solar sign. And so it's pointing at the sun, and the sun is just all over the place still. So the release points are going through Jupiter and Neptune, and it's wanting us to, on one hand, escape or dream or hide away or be secretive or meditate and reflect. On the other hand, it's saying like it's okay to just let it go. So really staying hydrated, detoxing, purging, cleansing, getting rid of things, kind of clearing house or clearing the emotional gunk is definitely something that is what's meant to be happening right now. Even though the eclipses are over, we're still really feeling the effects really until we come into that new moon in Sagittarius, which I don't think it's going to be happening until closer to the 23rd. So we've still got almost a week that we're going to be kind of feeling some of these energies. But like I said, as the day goes on, we start to see the moon then later in the afternoon coming into an opposition with Saturn. I guess before that, it's going to square Uranus and the nodes. So it looks like it's going to start squaring the nodes first thing in the morning, when the moon makes aspects to the nodes or outer planets or, Saturn or whatever, like fateful things happen. So this is the 15th. So even though I'm like liking the Jupiter trine, Venus, it can be with these two planets being pretty much almost at 29, a turning point where like a definitive thing happens in regards to a financial situation or a relationship, which may not feel comfortable, to be quite honest with you. So the moon's going to square its own nodes right around the time that the Jupiter trine is happening. So the moon, which represents emotions in Leo, the emotions that are in our heart, what we're creatively kind of feeling, like where we want to be dramatic and act out and be a little bit more active. Then the moon is going to start coming into a square with Uranus, and that's going to be around the 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on the 15th, which is just like flip-flopping changes of emotions and situations and things kind of shifting gears a little bit. And then it's going to come into an opposition with Saturn, which is emotionally kind of separate, not able to emotionally relate, kind of breaking things down, separating them, going through some kind of like emotional shift or home shift or change of heart. And that'll be right around the 7:30 p.m. Pacific time hour. And then we start to see the moon coming into a square with the sun, which is going to be the early morning hours of the 16th. But yeah, a little turbulent there. We don't really kind of, we miss the sweetness of the Jupiter trine Venus. Some of you guys might feel it, but I think that some of the lunar transits might kind of like wipe it away a little bit. Then we wake up on the morning on the 16th, and we see the moon that is in a square with the sun. So if you're on the East Coast, this is like 6, 7 a.m., like things still feel a little discombobulated. Something else I should mention also that was kind of going on in the background, and this is also on the 16th, is, the sun when it was at 23 degrees, the 25th and the 15th and the 16th, I'm looking at degrees, the 15th and the 16th of November, the sun in Scorpio is kind of in conjunct with Mars. Okay, this is important because Mars rules Scorpio. So part of that kind of uncomfortability situation that's going on is the fact that we have the ruling planet for Scorpio season, and the sun's in Scorpio, retrograding backwards, and it's in a funky angle that's kind of like irritating the Scorpio area of your chart. Another reason why the 15th and the 16th are not going to be the easiest days. Things may not go according to plan. You might feel like, things are kind of breaking down, or you're having schedule changes, or you're having to kind of pivot, or like you have to kind of make a choice and you're feeling like you're in between, two options, and, you're at a fork in the road. That's what happens when you see planets that square the nodes or oppose Saturn. And it's been my experience that when the sun and the moon are in a square to each other, it's just things don't really go according to plan. So trying to like set things up like the 15th in the evening and even the early morning on the 16th. These are days where things are going to get kind of like discombobulated a little bit. So we move here. Let's go later in the day on the 16th. We're going to see that Mercury in Scorpio is also in a trine with Jupiter. So that to me reads as like good news, expansive news, news that suddenly comes, you know, that's like global out of the blue, very much kind of tied to that Venus trine, Jupiter transit. I think this is more information coming out about unveiling stuff in regards to like finances and investments and things that have been secretive. And like now we're starting to kind of figure out what's really been going on behind the scenes. Mercury trine Jupiter, though, can be information that's kind of like blown out of proportion. Trines can sometimes be like overly big. So I'm wondering like what kind of big news is starting to kind of shape up for the world. As that trine is happening, we also see that the moon is squaring, you know, the sun and Mercury. So some kind of dramatic, kind of climactic thing can kind of be taking place. It's like, oh my God, did you hear the news? You know? Also on the 16th, we're going to then see later in the day that the moon will move into Virgo. And as it goes into Virgo, then we start placing a little bit more of our focus on Mercury. So let's take this ahead here. It looks like it's going to be around like the 6:30 p.m. Pacific time hour on the 16th. The moon moves into Virgo. So then our focus is going to become more so on Mercury because that's what it's ruled by. We will also see that Venus moves into Sagittarius. Now that's pretty significant because both the North and the South Node, you know, are ruled by Venus and also Mars. So we want to take into consideration when those planets are changing signs. We know that Mars is retrograde in Gemini right now, so we're rethinking things. We're going back on conversations we've had, reviewing documents, you know, thinking about making changes with social media or how we're getting around town, all these like Gemini type things. But, you know, because of the retrograde, Mars is going to be in Gemini and clear until March. So not that that's not important, but we're going to take note of like when Venus changes signs a little bit more often. So Venus moves into Sagittarius on the 16th, the mutable fire sign, ruled by Jupiter. So it's definitely expansive. It's big. It's more optimistic. It's more action oriented. So I'm actually quite happy to see Venus go into Sagittarius. And I think that because Mercury is at a 29, with that moon here, and you've got moon square Venus, some like question marks about, you know, how do we relate? How do we make changes in relationships and values? And there can be something that's like a little uncomfortable there with that square. And like I said, Mercury is at 29 degrees. So then like information becomes like very significant. 29 degrees can be very psychic and very intuitive too. So I'm curious to see what happens as Mercury is getting ready to kind of change signs. So moon will stay in Virgo, you know, clear until the next day. So we'll follow this into the 17th, which is Thursday. And we wake up in the morning and both Mercury and Venus are in the same sign. They're both in Sagittarius. Now, there will eventually be a conjunction that's going to happen. That's going to be happening closer to the 21st, I believe. But still, it's worthy of mentioning because you're going to start feeling it on the 17th. So Mercury and Venus enter Sagittarius. So Sagittarius rules foreign travel, the higher mind, legal system, sometimes justice, anything in regards to culture, airplanes, international things, colleges, just the higher mind, our philosophy, our belief system. This is also more like global. So we might start hearing more about what's going on globally. This is also about exchanges, so like packages and things that have to go through customs or have to be kind of like shipped, importing and exporting. That's a theme as well. But I think really the big talk, Mercury, is going to be the fact that you're going to start hearing more about countries discussing and more media that's discussing what's going on with the global markets and what each individual country is talking about or breaking down or analyzing in regards to money and resources. We're already starting to see glimmers of it now, so I think that's interesting. Just recently hearing like the UK's most recent prime minister coming in and talking about, you know, the exploration of conversion into digital currency and like a central bank currency. So I think it's already happening personally. But for these two planets to ingress very closely together, I've talked to you guys about how like when Mercury and Venus come together, like it's not always super romantic. Like in some cases it can be somebody who's very poetic and they can be really, very well spoken or have like a very beautiful voice or they're very talented at writing. But for the most part, it's like Mercury is very logical and Venus can sometimes be very illogical. So when the two come together, it's more about data and analysis when it comes to banking, investments, resources, things like that. So a little irritating with that Mercury Venus that's in a square to the moon in Virgo. But, you know, like I said, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So there's definitely a huge emphasis now. We're kind of taking a look at what's happening with Mercury. So watch for the bigger picture possibly coming out, you know, wanting to talk big about business, travel, education, publishing these themes. You know, technically Mercury being in this sign is not ideal. We're going to be seeing that Mercury entering into Sagittarius, even though it can be more positive and optimistic, technically it's going to be in its detriment because unlike Mercury in Virgo, which is going to be very to the point and on top of things, we're going to see Mercury in a Jupiterian sign. So it has a tendency to kind of blow things out of proportion, or sometimes it can kind of tell tall tales. Now, throughout this transit, what we're going to end up seeing with both of these planets, Venus and Mercury, ultimately will be, you know, oppositions to Mars and Gemini. You'll see more of this in Sagittarius season, and also squares that will be taking place between both, you know, Neptune in Pisces and Jupiter in Pisces. So there's definitely going to be like a clash of philosophy, belief systems, culture. There can be some really big blow-ups in regards to people having some really outlandish comments about religious or spiritual or cultural beliefs, and you know, going against what the media may be saying or what is kind of like the mainstream narrative with some things. I'm curious to see how that plays out, because there's definitely going to be some very different opinions seeing all of these planets come into Sag, oppose Mars, which is confrontational, and it does suggest that there is like very passionate and heated exchanges about what is right or what is the moral high ground, and then it's all going to kind of get drowned out and lost in these conjunctions in Pisces. So we'll see lots of mutable squares in Sagittarius season. This isn't going to be for probably another couple of weeks, so we're going to have to wait until these planets get up in degrees. But just prepare yourselves that a lot of this may start as early as some of this ingress. So I'm planning on doing a video on this transit in particular, and I want to unpack it and take a look at what might be happening during Sagittarius season. But just take a look at where Sag is in your chart right now, and just know that both Mercury and Venus going through there's going to be more talking about how we can open that area of your chart up and what is possible there. And I would say try to stay optimistic. That's the positive side of these Sag transits, but realize that it's going to get bombarded with oppositions to Mars and squares to Jupiter and Neptune. So right as it's getting to the tail end of those degrees, likely there's going to be a shift and there's going to be a change. And that change might be because of the Mars retrograde and opposition, where you're changing direction. So there in turn, it shifts what you believe in. Or it may be because of the squares that are happening both to Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces in your chart, where something isn't clear or something is really kind of dissolving. So we'll talk about that more when I get into that video. That's something I have planned for this week. Something else interesting that's going to be happening on the 17th is that we are going to see the moon in Virgo start building into a trine later in the day with the North Node. So that's wonderful for grounding, stabilizing, you know, getting things organized to kind of better support and focus on being in our bodies. So, you know, Virgo is about health and being of service and nurturing and taking care of something. So that's something else that can be really helpful in the midst of some of these transits, which can feel a little kind of wonky. Eating while staying grounded, you know, having a routine when the moon is in Virgo is very helpful. And working with the element of earth. We also see that the sun moves to 25 degrees of Scorpio. Now, many of you guys might not think that's a big deal, but I'm letting you guys know that there is a reactivation that is taking place. Now, we have had two eclipses actually that have taken place that are very similar to these degrees. So the November 19th, 2021, we had a Taurus lunar eclipse, a full moon that was around 26, 27 degrees. So the sun coming in opposition to that is reactivating that eclipse. But more specifically, we had a 25-degree lunar eclipse on May 15th, 2022. So you might want to go back to May 15th, take a look at what happened there, because there is something else coming up from that particular period that is getting reactivated because now the sun is going over that eclipse degree. It's been 6 months since that eclipse, and that is still unfolding. Let's take it to the 18th of the month. And as we get into the 18th, all right, we start to see a little bit more action going on with some of these lunar transits. Sun in Scorpio comes into a sextile with Pluto at 26 degrees. So remember when we had Mercury and Venus and they were sextiling Pluto and they were talking about what's possible and assessing it, making business deals and kind of talking it out. Now the sun comes in. So the sun sextile Pluto is like, okay, you know, what do we need to consciously or actively acknowledge that needs to transform so that way we can really shift some kind of power structure in regards to where Capricorn is in your chart. So don't fear the sextiles, even though Pluto is a heavy hitting planet. Remember, Scorpio loves Pluto. So this is a really powerful day, I think, to be honest with you. Not as strong as some of the earlier transits in the week. It seems like as the week goes on, it kind of gets a little bit more complex, especially with some of the oppositions and the squares. I feel like even though this is a wonderful aspect for strategizing and I think really kind of laying the foundation for making some really big change in our life, I'm not as crazy about some of the lunar transits that are taking place. We've got the moon in Virgo that is still kind of benefiting from a slight trine from Uranus, but it's coming into an opposition with Neptune. So we feel emotionally confused, sometimes depleted. We don't know which end is up. We're not sure how to feel. Our emotions are kind of up in the air. And we're also seeing that the moon is in a square with Mars, where we feel a little emotionally irritable and kind of uncomfortable. Now, Mars is the focal point of this square. So even though the moon moves faster and it'll shift out of Virgo, you know, going into the 19th, still, I mean, you've got a really strong T-square here with a Mars retrograde. And it's basically saying that part of the reason why there is some sense of mixed feelings or avoiding something is because there's like a not knowing what path to take, or a redirecting how you're communicating or what you're thinking, or a change of plans. Not the easiest day, to be honest with you. So watch for the 18th. It's really important if you're traveling, driving, sending emails, anything that requires detail. Usually with the moon in Virgo, it's a wonderful time to do these things. But there seems to be some like room for error or issues with visibility. And that can be literally like weather issues, you know, changes in plans as you're driving, you know, a road is shut down, you have to take an alternate route. Something shifts in regards to your daily routine, and then you realize you kind of have to alter your whole schedule. So not the easiest day on Friday. Kind of just be prepared that there can be some things that can kind of not pan out the way that you thought that they would. And it's really important to just be mindful of like what you're putting in your body, what you're absorbing, because the sixth house can be about the diet. So it's like, don't be, you know, eating and driving. Be really mindful of what you're eating. Be mindful of what you're consuming, what you're watching. That's something else that I would think about as well. And then later in the day, on the 18th, we're going to see the moon keep moving through Virgo, and it's coming into a trine with Capricorn. So the moon in Virgo is now out of the opposition with Neptune. It's coming into an opposition with Jupiter, so it can be more emotionally expansive. And maybe something happened earlier in the day on the 18th, and you're like, I just need some time to think about it. Like, let me get back to you tonight, or let me get back to you, you know, on Saturday morning. So that starts to clear up a little bit. At least we have the moon sextile the sun. So it is saying like, okay, I'm ready to kind of make some power moves. It's in a trine with Pluto, so we feel emotionally secure about what we've worked through or what we've been working on, and now we're making positive changes that's going to help us feel more stable. So definitely like Friday evening gets a little bit easier, but Friday seems a little hectic and it's like difficult to kind of juggle everything that's going on. Then we get to the 19th, and this will be Saturday of next week. And things get a little crazy here. So let's start it off in the morning. Mars is retrograde. You guys know this. You've known this. And Mars is coming into its second square with Neptune in Pisces. So low energy levels, feeling depleted, like not feeling like, you know, you're totally capable of getting everything done, or feeling like lots of mental fatigue. That could be another way that I could see this. You want to look back on the last time that we had Mars square Neptune. Let me pull that date for you guys really quick on here so I can take a look, because I don't remember myself. But I remember being like, what's going on? And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's Mars square Neptune. I'm just like so exhausted. So it looks like the last time that Mars was in a square to Neptune, it was at 23 degrees. But you may have been feeling it a day or so early. So it looks like it was right around like that October 9th and 10th of 2022. So just about a month ago. We know that when we have retrogrades, we'll see the planet make the aspect, retrograde, make the aspect again, go direct, make the aspect again. So this is one of those situations where we're going to see 3 Mars square Neptunes. What does it mean? You know, the darker side of Mars square Neptune, especially Mars in a mercurial sign, which deals with communication or travel, documents, vehicles, even neighbors, media, right? In the square, it can be, you know, lying, deceit, not being honest, like something kind of like being manipulated in some way, or like there not being enough clarity, or there's like some fogginess. Still, this screams to me, could be some extreme weather, visibility issues. Unfortunately, I said this and I saw that it happened recently. I think it was in Texas, like a pretty bad airplane crash, but 2 planes hit each other in midair. And I remember saying that part of the Mars retrograde was going to be like accidents in air, or it was going to be things where, you know, stuff can't slow down. We'll see more of this as planets go through Sagittarius and it opposes Mars and it squares Neptune. But I think part of it is still the Mars square Neptune, where it's like something's in the air, it's moving fast, but it doesn't have visibility. It can't see everything. So one thing that I've kind of noticed with this transit is like information comes fast, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate. And just thinking back to some of the things that were going on during that time period, you know, stuff that was happening in my life, I was like, okay, this thing's going to happen. And like, it seems like it's like this, and this, and it's all great. And then a week goes by and then there's some lunar aspects that reactivate it. And I'm like, actually, no, it wasn't that at all. Or like that person changed their mind, or like, you know, did not give you all of the information or all of the details. So the 19th is definitely going to be a day that I would say, you know, a day before, a day after. It'll go the 18th till about maybe like the 20th. Not the best for visibility, not the best for clarity, not the best for honesty. Be mindful and be very careful when it comes to dealing with signing documents, paperwork, anything in regards to commitments, because likely if you are doing this, there is a possibility that when, like for example, Venus or Mercury start coming into the opposition, there's going to be a segue and there's going to be a change in pace. Okay, so not trying to be Debbie Downer, just letting you guys know, especially if you have something that you have to agree on these days, likely it can change. Now we will see another Mars-Neptune square that's going to be taking place. It looks like that's going to be taking place, I believe it'll be closer to March of next year. Let's look. I'll give you that date. I did do a Mars retrograde video if you guys haven't already seen it, so I have all of these dates up. But yeah, it looks like we're going to see Mars square Neptune, and that's going to be actually at 24 and 25 degrees. So that'll be like mid-March, March 12th, 13th, 14th. That's when this is happening. And when that takes place, it'll be the Sun and Mercury and Neptune all conjunct, and they're going to be squaring Mars and Gemini direct. So the Mars-Neptune stuff, there's still not a lot of clarity clear until like March of next year. So there, to an extent, like if you're not sure, you may delay making some of these decisions or signing things until closer to that date. All right, so also this same day, we are going to see the moon in Libra So then the moon moves into a sign that's associated with harmony, relationships, balance, right? This is a Venus related kind of sign. So it's interesting to see like the moon immediately come into a sextile with Venus and also Mercury. So there's a sense of being like, let's make a deal, or let's work through this, or anything's possible. And it's kind of like, yes, but there's definitely still some kind of like shady, salesman type vibes that are out there. So just be mindful of that. But the moon just came out of an opposition to Jupiter. So you might have found that, especially the early morning, if you're up a little bit earlier, there can be some like big emotions and big feelings right when you wake up in the morning, depending on where you live. Okay, so moon in Libra, and that's really enhancing the Mercury-Venus conjunction of just wanting to talk about some of these subjects. Lots of room for culture, philosophy, travel, people in different places, connecting with people who are far away, talking about news that might be going on in a foreign place. All right, so then this is going to lead us now to Sunday the 20th. Take it through the day. Not too many lunar aspects. You're actually going to see more on the 20th. And this is when we start kind of seeing the transits actually work in our favor here. I'm a fan of Sunday. I think it can be a little bit easier. Right on the brink, actually, of leaving Scorpio season, getting ready for Sag season. We've got this moon in Libra that is going to form a trine with Saturn. So emotional commitments, committing to home, family changes, committing to friend changes, being there for other people, being a support system for another person, being able to connect with people who have our back and can give us like good advice. And then we've also got the moon that's coming into a trine with Mars and Gemini. So this will actually be a grand air trine, which I love as kind of like the send-off for Scorpio season. That's like, what did we learn? What changed? Like, how can we better support one another? So great day for communicating, connecting with friends, being with other people. We are getting ready to come into what is going to be the new moon just a couple days later. So it's a nice way, I think, to spend Sunday like with other people, with friends, or just kind of socializing right before we get into the moon going into Scorpio. And it will be a little bumpy and a little uncomfortable coming into that new moon because it's got to clear the south node and then it's got to come into the sign of Sag, and then it's going to be a new moon trine Jupiter. So the 23rd is when we have that new moon. I'm going to do a video on that in this next week just to get it out early for you guys. But I would say use Sunday to socialize. I'm digging it. I also like the fact that, the sun is in the late degrees of Scorpio and it's in a trine to Jupiter. So where the sun trine Neptune was kind of playing out was more about our divine purpose and our belief system and feeling inspired and feeling that connection to a higher power. The sun trine Jupiter is like, hey, everything's kind of like working out. Like, this is great, emotional, changing, like deep, like there can be a sense of still mourning and having to learn to let go of something, but the lessons that came from that and like what actually kind of came about that was like a little bit more positive and optimistic. And, maybe it's like, hey, everything happens for a reason. That may be how some of us look at it. But still pretty decent day on tap. It will be technically the 21st. So it'll be next week that you're going to see Mercury and Venus exactly conjunct. But it was worth mentioning that like from the 18th really all the way through the 21st, these two are moving very closely with each other. So I think that in itself kind of deserves a video. So I'll be talking about that for you guys. I'll take it through the 12 signs. I'll talk to you about for each and every one of the 12 rising signs, where Sag is in your chart, what this means, where we're going to have a little bit more positivity and optimism, but also need to kind of really be awake and be alert and realize that there will be a thunderdome that will go on between the squares that are going to happen with Jupiter and Neptune in the opposition to Mars, because there's definitely a pivot and a plot twist that's going to be happening during Sag season. Okay. That's pretty much it for the week, guys. So like I said, I'll be back. Obviously this next week we have Sagittarius season. We have a new moon in Sag coming. Jupiter's going direct in Pisces. So there's so much Sag energy. It's just going to be a breath of fresh air. And I'm really excited to see the beginning of Sag season because I think it's going to be the reprieve that we all really need. Make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're good. So that's the week at a glance. Just a heads up, stuff that's going on in the channel this week. So Saturday, we're going to have Saturday the the 19th, we are going to be doing live astrology readings. It'll be Saturday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. I'll put the link out early if you guys would like to do a donation-based astrology reading. We'll put your chart live on the channel. We'll hang out on Saturday night and we'll do some astrology readings. You can ask a question. We also do synastry readings, and it's all by donation for the channel. My new 2023 astrology calendar is now ready. I have been waiting and waiting to make sure the proofs are good and everything's ready. The prints are out there. We put that on the website just this week. We have both a digital as well as a physical copy version, so you can choose whichever one that you would like. Try to make them as affordable as possible for you guys so everybody can kind of get a piece. They are available for print only in the United States. It's just like a printing thing, so I hope you guys understand. Hopefully in the future, if we have future versions, we can expand. But if you happen to live in Canada or if you're in Europe or other parts of the world, we do have a digital download version. So you can still get that through digital download. All the physical copies, there's a QR code on the physical calendar itself. So if you buy the physical, you're going to get the digital as well as my gift to you. Put it out on 11/11 for my birthday. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Lots of love went into that. Every Monday, we have a new Midheaven podcast that comes out on my other channel that I do with my partner in crime, Mike the Peace Stealer. Check that out if you want a little bit of comedy and some current events with astrology. And if you guys want to support Beyond the Veil, you can do so by clicking the subscription button below. Check out the community tab. We're always posting stuff on there. We have various levels of memberships on Beyond the Veil if you would like to support. We also accept donations, or if you would like to book a personal reading with me, click the website below. Go to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. You can book with me. I've got openings starting in February, so we are booking out into the new year already. I'm usually booked 2 months in advance, sometimes longer. We've got new courses coming that we're going to be doing in the new year. I'm getting all ready to do Astro 201 and also be putting together some stuff for the astrology of 2023. So I'm very excited to share that with you guys probably in the next month or so. Get ready because all of my stuff on my website is going to be on sale for Black Friday all the way through Cyber Monday in just a few short weeks. We'll be posting all of that. You can also join my newsletter if you want to stay on the up and up when we have that stuff coming out. Those of you guys who are feeling these vibes, or you want to let me know how the eclipse played out for you, or are you a Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising? Are you super excited about having Mercury and Venus in your sign? Are you traveling? What's going on? Leave me your comments below, especially if you are a new subscriber. Say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear from you. All right, guys, I will see you all in just a few days. Enjoy your week, and I will see you very soon. Take care.